Welcome to episode 5 of Inside the Designer Studio. Today we have a very special guest. I am Veronica Diaz and my dear co-host is Elliot Goldman. And before we introduce our guest, let me remind you to please like and subscribe and give us your comments and feedback because we want to show you the person behind the brands that we love. So without more further ado, Elliot, please.
Well, Veronica, since we're not going to sing the Canadian national anthem this morning, I would like to introduce our first international guest of Inside the Designer Studio, Mr. Louis Desjardins, live from Canada. Good morning, Louis.
Hey, how are you doing, Elliot? How are you doing, Veronica? Very nice to meet you, Veronica. Elliot, of course, we know each other.
Yeah, Louis and I have known each other for a few years. We are met. I don't know. We met at one show. I think we met in Munich the first time. Louis was exhibiting with Oliver, whose speakers we distribute, and then Louis is also exhibited with us here at Rocky Mountain and I think Expona, but I'm not really sure. But Louis is a friend, even though I don't carry his product, and neither does Veronica. But Louis is a lot of fun, and we thought it would be great for those people that are into particularly analog and Kronos to meet the brains behind the invention and what I think is a really nice product. So without further ado, Veronica, why don't you start?
Sure. So, well, first, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your brand, how you got started?
Well, I'm Canadian, as Elliot said. I live here in Montreal, Canada. And we started Kronos a little over 10 years ago as a very, very high-end record player with the objective to make the best, possibly that we could make in the analog domain. And things are just rosy and peachy. We're in love with life. We love music. We love meeting audiophiles. Just happy to be able to get out of this COVID. We're doing a Munich show very soon. I won't be at Expona. I know Elliot's going to be, but we'll be in Munich, and just looking forward to meeting all these wonderful people again.
We have a sort of quick questions I would like to ask you, but I'm super curious. I read about you, and I read that you created a prototype when you were starting and then got great reviews, and then you started going that path. But my question is, how you decide, that's it, I found it, Eureka, that's it, this is a philosophy I want to follow, and it's just going to get better?
Well, it's nice that you put it that way, but it never quite happens that way, actually. Meaning to say, I was like many, being an audiophile for a lot of people mean getting your hands into the equipment, connecting things, disconnecting things, trying things. And I was doing this with turntables. So I was modifying turntables. I'm a little bit more do-it-yourself maybe than most. I'm a tinkerer. And I read an article at some point in Stereophile talking about the impact of torsional vibrations on suspended record players, and I preferred suspended record players. So it was basically an article on the vector drive by Funk Firm, and they were proposing a solution to stop a kind of a shimmy that happens when, through to torque force in the suspension, and how that could affect sound. And I was reading about this, and I thought, okay, this is an interesting solution they're proposing, but actually I think it would work better with two platters going counter rotationally. And this was kind of a eureka moment where I went from tinkering to building a prototype, because I had to build this. I couldn't modify anything to make that work, so I had to build it from scratch. And it took 2 years, and it was kind of scary when I listened to it the first time, because I was thinking, I hope I didn't waste 2 years and a lot of money doing this. And but it worked out really great. And from the get-go, a couple of months later, I was doing the show in Montreal with that prototype, and then 6 months later, I was in one of the top rooms at CES in 2012, in one of the LAM rooms with a production version, and we haven't looked back, ever since.
It is a really cool looking product. I mean, my first exposure to the product was, I don't know what it is, but I think I need to have one. And it's just really it's a unique design. It doesn't look like anything else. And I won't consider myself the world's greatest analog expert, but it's a really good sounding turntable.
Thank you, Elliot.
Why don't we start we're going to ask you a series of questions. Just have fun with them. And this is a little bit to get to know you and a little bit about perhaps what's going to happen in the future. So Veronica, why don't you start?
All right. So what sound do you love?
What sound do I like? Oh my. You mean as an audiophile, like in terms of audio, the audio sound, or do you mean in terms of the different kind of music?
What sound do you love?
Yeah,
You hear something.
Well, I mean, as an audiophile, if anything, I just like the live sound, the sound that hasn't been, I mean, the sound that sounds like a performance. So that's what I like. But in terms of music taste, I like, from classical, Baroque music, jazz, fusion jazz, and I even sometimes, I have to admit, listen to my daughter's LP of Ariana Grande, if that's not too much to admit. But I mean, I love all kinds of sound. I like techno, I like rock, I like everything. But having said that, I find that I spend a little more time listening to classical music, if anything, because the rest of the stuff I find I kind of know inside and out, and I get more surprised with classical music.
As a follow-up question, what sound do you hate?
What sound do I hate? Oh man, I hate everything. Okay, well. For one thing, as you know me, I'm an analog guy, so I don't have any digital in my system, and I find it a little bit difficult to listen to digital music. There's a certain artifact that bothers me, and some people will say, yeah, but there's also an artifact to analog, but I prefer the artifact that, I mean, the added little clicks and pops that analog brings than the subtractive sound effect that I hear through digital. Now, if somebody says I like vanilla ice cream and the other person says I like chocolate ice cream, you can't really say one's right and one's wrong. But in my particular case, I would say digital is a sound I'm not very fond of. And also, besides this, anything that sounds like a walkie-talkie, I guess I don't like. There's a lot of systems that just have mid-range and it's a little bit hashy and distorted, and that, of course, I don't like, and most people, I'm sure, don't like that either.
So is that chocolate or vanilla?
Well, let's say, yeah, I think I tend to like chocolate ice cream, but with a little bit of vanilla, it's even better, I have to admit.
Okay. Veronica?
Louis, if you weren't doing what you are doing in the audio business, what profession would have you chosen?
Oh my. Well, I was working as a photographer, commercial photographer, for 25 years, and I really enjoyed that, but I would never go back to this. I think I kind of got burnt out from it, like doing it for too long. But no, I have to tell you, to me, it's do or die. I just love what I do. I'm just crazy about it. And I don't know, really, this is what I love doing.
Cool. What's your first memory of music? What's the first thing that you could remember that you heard music and it turned the light on in your head?
Well, I'll tell you the first audio experience I remember, we're talking about tinkering and audiophiles doing things. My dad had bought a console system by Philips, and at that time it was basically the price of a car. It was Philips used to make really high-end stuff. They were, the people who invented the compact disc with Sony, but before that, they also, I think, brought about stereo and playback. And anyway, he had this console, and I guess we had children's records, and we would always ask my father to play this and to play that. And one week he was kind of not feeling like it, so he said, the stereo is broken, so not for us to annoy him about playing this and that. And so while he was at work, I took out some long nose pliers and some scissors, and I tore out the fabric in front of the speaker. And then I saw that there was some paper stuff there, so that wouldn't really be useful with it. So I tore out the cone, and then I got to the wires and I started pulling the wires out of the thing. And by the time my mother caught up with me and saw the mess I was making. And so that's my first audiophile experience I remember. But when we were kids, I think it was really magical. Sound was really magical. Like, where are these people coming from? Are there people hiding in that box? Are there people playing music in there? And it's really amazing. And I think that for most people that are audiophiles, we always want to get this bewilderness. We want to get this feeling of being bewildered again, of being completely fooled.
I agree. I mean, my first experience was my father owned something similar. He owned this big Grundig console that had, AM and FM and shortwave radio and a turntable. Obviously, there was no digital. And I remember as a little kid, my father liked a couple of things that I can remember, not all of them, but like he was a really big Louis Prima and Keely Smith fan. And I can still remember the first time I heard, Belafonte live at Carnegie Hall, because my mom and dad loved that stuff. And it sounded so amazing, this live recording of this guy and the whole crowd. And even though it was mono, and even though it was far from the perfect setup, here I am, 69 years later, still remembering this experience as a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old and saying, wow, that was amazing. And it does, it gives you goosebumps and the hair
does.
on your arms. And I think that's when we all know that we're onto something that is, greater than this box that we're looking at. So.
Right.
Well, we still play that Belafonte record that shows.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic record for one thing. And to be really honest with you, Elliot, I think some of those old tube consoles, because that Grundig would have been a tube console in the day, I think they were pretty good, actually. They were
good. They were good.
It's all compared to what we have in the high end today, but there was a really nice warm tone to this equipment, and a lot of people like old style equipment, like old tube Macintosh or old tube quad or whatever, and they really do have a wonderful tone.
I agree with you. To me, it's always been about the music, and anything that brings people closer to the music, I think is great. Even when I had my kids, it was like, I never tried to force them to listen to something or the other thing, just expose them to music. One of my kids liked rock and roll, the other one liked classical music. Wasn't because of me, it's just what they chose. And I think it's great. It's all great. To me, I could not imagine living my life without music. And I'm grateful for the fact that at least when I was younger, I did get exposed to it. I hope that music programs don't go away, and that whatever these kids get to listen to, that perhaps it would be something that turns them on towards going in the future. And we'll leave it at that. So.
Veronica, if I have a question, what kind of sound do you like besides the sound of my voice?
Well, I'm going to be very specific. In nature, I like the sound of the sea, a calm sea and a rough sea. I love the sound of the sea. But in music, I think I like all acoustical instruments, all of them. Yeah.
Very nice.
In all styles. But now I'm going to get into spooky territory because I have to ask you, what do you think about the wife acceptance factor? Is that a real thing? Does that affect you?
Well, in my case, I kind of solved the problem by making audio my business. So my wife can't really argue with what I like spending time doing at home, which is listening to music. You know, and if she says, you know, you could help around the house, I tell her, yeah, but honey, I'm working right now, and you know, I wouldn't disturb you when you're working, and so I kind of get away with that. You know, I get away with it because, of course, it's my business. My main listening room is in my house.
This is a smart man. You have to listen to him about this.
Now, for sure, Veronica, audio takes a lot of real estate in the house. You know, so I understand wives being sometimes a little bit, you know, negative about it. Perhaps negative is a big word, but a little bit leery about it because it does take a lot of real estate. A lot of people are lucky to have a dedicated listening room. In my case, I listen to the music in the living room, which is a family room. And so, you know, the stereo takes 30% of the room, really. And so we have to be nice to our wives. And that question is a little bit loaded, and I should say spouse instead of wives, because there's quite a few ladies that actually love audio and have audio systems.
Good. Louis, who would you love to collaborate with in the audio business and why?
Well, I love collaborating with you because we've always had a good time of it, you know.
Besides,
do you mean at shows, or do you mean like?
No, I mean, if you know, of all the people, all the designers, all the people that make equipment, who would you love to do a project with?
I've been really fortunate that I've basically done a lot of shows with basically pretty much all the people I really respect in the industry, you know. We've done shows with CH, with of course Oliver Goebel, which we both admire, Elliot. You know, the guys from TLA are great. I mean, there's so many. I don't know if I have an answer for you. I try to look at every collaboration opportunity as an opportunity, and sometimes we get very surprised because we don't expect to meet somebody that's going to become very important or influential to us, and we just bump into them through chance, you know. So and sometimes we're disappointed just the same way. We think, oh, this would be great to do a collaboration with such a person, and it doesn't pan out the way we were hoping. So I don't know, you know, I try not to have too many expectations ahead of time, and so far I've been really satisfied with all the people that I've met and worked with.
And a related question, do you have an idol in the audio industry, or past or present?
Well, I didn't have before I started this video chat, but do I have an idol? Okay, so a little bit aside from designers, I really had a lot of respect for Harry Pearson, the editor-in-chief of Absolute Sound, that passed away a few years ago. I mean, this must be the guy that I met that had the best set of ears, you know, ever. I mean, this guy understood sound deeply. He understood sound. He had a lot of experience, a lot of exposure, but he was also very clear as to what he liked and what he didn't like, and he understood it right away. I mean, he listened to my product. The last review that was written by him in his life was the Kronos Pro turntable. And when he heard it the first time, after 2 or 3 minutes only of listening, he said, please, you know, let's stop the music. And he started talking to me about the product and telling me all the things that I understood about it, but it took him like 3 minutes. It was absolutely unbelievable. So this guy, I will always put very highly, and I think he changed the audio industry, you know, not just the reviewing industry, but you know, the publication of audio industry, but also I think the whole audio industry, because he kind of like got away from measurements and got away from technical stuff, overly technical or geeky stuff, and brought it back to the music and the sensation of the musical experience. And that to me is a hero of mine.
He's one of mine too. He's actually, as you know, Harry was a mentor of mine and a friend. And I always tell people that want to learn about the audio business that go back and get the first 10 or 15 or 20 issues of the Absolute Sound. I'm talking about the old ones, back when there was no language and there was no path, to be honest with you. And certainly there was a lot less product and a lot more unacceptable product. I'll leave it at that. Today, I think there's obviously much better product and whatever. But Harry was also a great writer, and reading Harry was like watching a weekly television show. That each episode that came out, he took you on this journey and explained things. Okay, and was he always right? No. Did everybody like him? No. Was he an unusual person and a difficult person at times? Absolutely. But he was, in my opinion, brilliant and interesting and incredibly charming and incredibly intelligent. And I learned a tremendous amount about music from him. And as you said, he wasn't a technical person. It wasn't about watts and distortion and all the rest of it. It was about music. And I was fortunate enough where I lived to meet him and go to concerts with him and other people, like what back in the day when I worked at Lyric, like Mike Kay and Arnie Nudell and John Dahlquist and on and on and on and on. And, you know, I'll say it again, if you really want to go back and learn about audio, go back and read the first 10 or 15 or 20 issues of the Absolute Sound. And I think you'd have a very different viewpoint. He was my hero too. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's an important thing to me. So.
Well, you're not interrupting. And I have to say, if you can't find the original issues of Absolute Sound, you can always read the Kronos review that he wrote in HP Sounding. And it's a fabulous review. Of course, I love it.
I don't know if you can see it from here, you can't, but sitting to my right on my desk is pretty much every Absolute Sound that ever has been published. And I do go back from, you know, just pull out one like here, you know, that's sitting there. Okay, this happens to be a shot on the steps of Seacliff back when I was a kid. Okay.
Oh my.
With the original staff. So, and I go back and I read some of this stuff all the time. It's like rereading a good book. I definitely enjoy it. So Louis.
Yeah.
Today is your last night. I don't wish any harm. Today is your last night on Earth. Okay.
Oh.
You can eat one thing and you can listen to one piece of music. What are you eating and what are you listening to?
You remember that Mexican restaurant that we found in Rocky Mountain?
Yes. So you're gonna eat a taco?
I don't remember. I think I had fajitas or something, but I gotta tell you, I don't know if if the food was so kind of bland at that place, but that time that we went to that little Mexican place in a strip mall, you know, about 20 minutes away from the Gaylord Hotel, I really enjoyed the food that night. And I remember going back to my room feeling like my stomach would burst. You know what I mean? I just loved it. I love Mexican food.
So what would have been the music that went with that meal?
Oh my. I think some kind of like some kind of Elvis music, you know, but the kind of beginning Elvis, you know, that was kind of rockabilly, that kind of like rocked hard, you know. I really like that stuff, you know. And yeah, I mean, yeah, that was great fun, and it had a real feeling of a sorry.
I said your last night would be like a Tarantino movie. Tacos.
Exactly.
Tacos and Elvis.
And with you in it, Elliot, it surely would be.
Oh, so well, this is our last questions. Oh no, where do you see yourself and your company in the next 5 years?
Well, very good question. You know, we've basically changed our entire line of product more or less during the pandemic. So we have a new flagship, which is the Kronos Discovery, and we've got you know, tremendous response from that. We just introduced 2 new tone arms that are really spectacular. There's going to be something replacing our lower end at some point in the middle future, and so we're set now. My mission is to, you know, is to travel the world and get people as involved, you know, and happy with their music system as possible. And we visit a lot of people in their home and see their setups and talk about it and try to help them out a little bit if there's a thing we can help them with. And I feel that I'm really ready to go back into this campaigning, traveling the world, and I think we've got all the right weapons and all the right ammunition to have great fun with it, you know. So sharing music, and the company is going to stay, I think, very loyal or very focused on what has made us successful in the past, which is analog. This is what we're doing. And only in the source of analog. So I don't want to do amplifiers, or we do a phono preamp, but I mean, that's because it's still linked with the turntable. So continuing exactly what we're doing, but keep on opening, peeling more layers off the onion and getting closer to the core of the music, which is energy, you know, like try to keep as much of that vital energy in the music as possible. So this, I would say, that would be what we're going to be going for.
That's a great answer. So I won't be waiting for the Kronos CD player anytime soon.
No.
I want to thank you for your time. I thought you were great. Just one last thing I have to ask. What is the significance of the baby over your right shoulder?
Everybody wants to know about the baby.
This was there was a kind of like a one-issue magazine that was a big size, you know, like oversized magazine that was a promotional piece for a visual artist, and they asked me to shoot the cover of it, and that was the cover. And it says on the censored little part that says exhibit, which XYB, which means exhibit, which means exhibited, you know. And that was the name of the magazine because it was the idea of exhibiting things. And that thing, when you put a bunch of visual artists together and you say we're going to do a magazine, for sure it's going to be a painful birth. And so my idea for the cover was to show
painful birth,
the result of a painful birth, you know. And
it's the birth of an audiophile. That right there.
Exactly. Great.
Great. Well, thank you very much again. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Elliot, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This was episode 5 of Inside the Designer Studio. And stay tuned for the next episode. And again, like, subscribe, give your comments, and ring the bell so you can have notifications about the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.